Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, it's a post-game podcast from another embarrassing Timberwolves home loss. The Wolves couldn't score early against the Warriors. We're in danger of having less than 30 points in the first half. We'll talk about what happened to the Wolves offense in this one and some more alarming individual performances and what ultimately turned into another loss for the Wolves. We'll break the whole thing down. We'll talk about what to expect Monday night against the Hawks. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend. The Timberwolves lost on Saturday night to the Warriors. It was not pretty. We'll talk about what happened in that game. That's what we'll do most of the show here today. I want to touch on a little bit of Wolves Hawks tonight here a little bit later. Of course, tomorrow's Christmas Eve. The Wolves play Christmas Day afternoon against the Mavs, and hopefully they won't be going into that game with a 3-game losing streak. Although at the Hawks is a bit of a challenge, especially coming off the we'll call it just the bad vibes of the most recent 2 home losses for the Wolves. So a lot to get to on the show here today. This Monday of Christmas week, a big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. Of course, you can also watch in the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder about the Locked On Daily newsletter. The Locked On Wolves daily newsletter. You can subscribe at LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe today. You'll get a newsletter Monday through Friday. All things Timberwolves, some great national NBA stuff as well. So be sure to subscribe. Again, LockedOnDaily.com and look for Locked On Wolves. You can subscribe there. All right. So Timberwolves, of course, coming off the embarrassing loss on Thursday night. The national TV loss that they suffered, just the complete and utter beatdown from the Knicks and Karl Anthony Towns. We covered that. I hosted a live postcast Thursday night, early Friday morning. I also did the show on Friday. So hopefully you listen to that and some of my kind of bigger picture thoughts related to, and Jack Borman and I talked on the postcast on Thursday night about some of the Julius Randle stuff. We'll get into Randle today because there were some not great Julius moments once again, but we have to start with how horrific the Timberwolves offense was early in this game. Minnesota did not get to 30 points until there was less than 2 minutes left in the first half. In the first half, there was 1:47 left on the clock in the second quarter before the Timberwolves cracked 30 points. It was a pair of, I think, Gobert free throws. Now, the Warriors offense was nearly as bad. And it wasn't simply the offense. It wasn't simply actually the execution. It came and went. Like there were certainly rough moments. Turnovers were a serious problem, but it was just a lot of missed shots. Like it was more that than anything else. And Golden State came to the party when it came to missed shots as well. And really it was the turnovers that did the Wolves in the sense that allowed to easy Golden State offensive possessions because Golden State couldn't throw a beach ball in the ocean either early in this game. And so the Wolves compounded the problems when they weren't missing open shots. They were turning the ball over, and there were enough of those that Golden State was able to build a double-digit first-half lead. The Wolves in the second quarter of this game did not score a point in the second quarter. Well, actually, let me say this a different way. They only had 15 first-quarter points. So end of the first quarter, Timberwolves are down 26-15. And it was more about both teams missing shots than it was either team playing phenomenal defense. Even Golden State's 26 points. It's not like the Wolves were playing great defense early. It was fine, but it was 26-15. So the Wolves already only have 15 points, and then they don't score a point, not just a field goal. They don't get to the line. They don't make a bucket until the 5:38 mark of the second quarter. Jaden McDaniels hits a three-pointer. And again, Golden State's just missing along the way as well, which really helped the Wolves out. It allowed them to at least stay within shouting distance in this game, and that's basically what happened. This was still a 13-point deficit at halftime, and actually they got it down to single digits, and Golden State hit a tough three kind of right before halftime to push it from 10 to 13. I think it briefly got down to 8 or 9 before that. So it was 13 points at halftime, and then all of a sudden in the third quarter, things flipped. The bench, after having a really quiet first half, being, Golden State is one of the best benches in the league, at least in terms of they give their guys a ton of minutes. Like most of the time, Steve Kerr is playing an 11-man rotation. It was 10 in this game with Draymond Green not playing. So a 10, and it shifted around a little bit, right? Like at times, Moses Moody's been hurt too. Lindy Waters is occasionally in the rotation, but it was a 10-man rotation. Golden State gets a ton of production out of their bench. And they also have had a little bit of a fluid starting lineup too. Kyle Anderson started in this game. Trace Jackson-Davis started in the absence of Draymond Green. The last game the Wolves played the Warriors, Brandon Podziemski started. He came off the bench in this game. Buddy Hield's been in and out. Kuminga, obviously. Like, it's just a pretty solid. And now Dennis Schroeder, of course, in a Warriors uniform too. It's only his second game with the Warriors. A relatively fluid and active rotation. Kind of the opposite philosophy that Chris Finch has had. And I'm not saying that as an indictment on Chris Finch. I mean, both teams are hovering around 500. It's not like Golden State's, 30 and 10. They're, or 25 and 10 or whatever. They're 15 and 12, right? Like it's a similar situation as the Wolves are in, and they haven't been playing great lately either. All that to say, in this game, the Wolves bench underperformed Golden State's in the first half, and it was a problem. It was again part of the reason why Golden State was able to build this 13-point halftime lead. But in the third quarter, the Timberwolves bench came alive. Naz and Dante DiVincenzo were fantastic. Nikhil was solid. And it was the three bench guys. We've talked about this plenty in the past, how those three, Naz, Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Nikhil Alexander-Walker together are phenomenal in basically any lineup, no matter who they're out there with. If it's Rudy and Mike Conley is typically the best pairing, but Ant and Rudy, you'll get them with Ant and Randle occasionally as well. But those units in the third quarter were great for Minnesota. Naz Reid in particular was awesome. Offense and defense had a nice block mixed in there. Ended up with 16 points in this game. Was 4 of 7 on threes. Hit a couple tough shots in the paint. At least mixed it up a little bit on the glass. Not like he was super impactful. We'll talk more about the Wolves' rebounding struggles as well. But Naz was good. Dante had certainly a top 5 game in a Timberwolves uniform. Setting aside his phenomenal flame-throwing preseason, which kind of threw us all, had us all believing that this dude wasn't going to miss all season. And then it's been obviously a nightmare start to the year for Dante. But he was great in this game. 19 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 3 of 6 threes. We'll talk more about him and studs and duds. But it was the Wolves bench in the third quarter that was so phenomenal and allowed them to truly get back in the game and actually take a couple of leads, like late third quarter, early fourth quarter. The Wolves grabbed leads of a point, or I don't know that it ever got above 1 point. Actually, I think I have it pulled up here. Maybe not. I don't think they ever led by more than 1 point in this game, but that was when it happened. Was the third quarter. That's when they really, they never led by more than a point, but they did initially take their first lead of the game in the third quarter of this game, and it was a big part was the bench. And then fourth quarter, same deal where it was kind of back and forth early in the quarter. Eventually, Steph Curry comes back in the game. Ant and Steph go blow for blow for a little while, and then all of a sudden the Wolves just can't catch up. The offense got stagnant again, and I'm not necessarily blaming Ant. He hit back-to-back threes at the top of the circle off of screens, and after he hit those, the Warriors started to blitz him instead of just going trying to fight through a screen. And once the ball got out of his hands, it just didn't really keep rotating. The ball didn't keep moving. And the stagnant offense led to one and done possessions. And then it was Steph hitting sometimes tough, sometimes open threes on the other end, hit a tough 2 mixed in there too. There was a couple bad missed defensive rotations. Curry was hitting him out of screen and roll, but then there was one possession where they forced the ball out of his hands, the Wolves did, and it swung back to him, and there was just a missed defensive rotation because McDaniels had to leave Curry to contest another wide open potential 3, and Randle missed his rotation, didn't go guard Curry, stayed home on whoever his guy was, who wasn't a threat, First of all, because whoever it was wasn't Curry, and Curry was one pass away from the ball, which is, 9U basketball is the biggest threat is besides the guy with the ball is the guy that's closest to the ball. You can't just not guard him, especially in the NBA, right? Dude's going to hit an open three. And by the way, it's the best shooter that the world has ever seen. And Randle doesn't rotate to him. Curry hits the open three. And that was effectively the dagger. I think that pushed it from 8 to 11 points, that particular shot. So it was basically over at that point. And that was, again, bad offense leading to, because they were holding serve against Curry, which you can only do for so long. But if you stop holding serve, Curry's not going to stop. You got to get lucky at that point. They didn't get lucky, and the offense was stagnant. It wasn't good late, and they ended up losing this game by 10. I want to dig in on the bigger issues along the way. We'll talk about transition defense. We'll talk about rebounding and second chance points once again. We'll talk about missed free throws, and then we'll get into some individual performances. We'll close with a little bit of Wolves Hawks as well, as we got that coming up here tonight. So all that is coming up here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our new friends at Skylight Frames. If you want to celebrate with and stay connected to people who are far away, a really good way to do that is Skylight Frames. I mean, it's the holiday season. Maybe you're with family. Obviously, I'm not where I normally am for this show, so I am with family, which is great. But I'm not going to be able to see everybody that I wanted to see during this holiday season. If you want to be a part of those holiday festivities, you want them to be a part of yours, consider Skylight Frames. It's the perfect gift for you this time of year. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame that your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. The setup for Skylight Frames takes less than 60 seconds. It's super easy to use, and the sharing is absolutely seamless. Invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. You can email as well with no account or subscription required. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's Skylight Frame, SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. All right, let's talk about some of the issues the Wolves had in this game that were pretty prevalent. So if you look at the box score, rebounding ended up completely dead even. Each team had 45 rebounds. Each team had 11 offensive rebounds and 45 defensive rebounds, right? So if you just glance at that, it feels like, all right, fine, no big deal. Well, it was a big deal because a lot of that damage was done early in the game. And some of that, the rebounding stuff happened when this game was at a frenetic pace, lots of missed shots at both ends. The Wolves weren't converted on their end. But, and also, by the way, the Wolves had, I know the grand scheme of this, like, there's noise in total rebounding numbers in any game. Like, Jaden McDaniels had 5 offensive rebounds. I think 3 of them were his own misses that then he ended up scoring on a couple of them. Like, fine. But the bigger issue were those intermediate rebounds that led to kick out threes or led to easy buckets for the Warriors that the Wolves allowed and allowed the Warriors to get more second chance points than Minnesota in this game. These are the rebounds that I've been harping on all season. And it's usually not the bigs whose fault it is. There was one rebound that I have in mind. It was in the first half that both Randle and Gobert kind of they gave half effort going for the rebound. And it ended up as a second chance opportunity for the Warriors. I think they hit a long 2 on that possession. And it was what Chris Finch threw his hands up. Like, why is our effort not better here? Right. That was a big effort problem, both in terms of like the significant problem with effort, but also the bigs with effort problems. Julius ended up with 7 rebounds. Jaden had 7. Rudy had 12. The intermediate stuff is more an issue when it comes to the guards. Mike Conley only had 2 rebounds in 25 minutes. Dante had 4 rebounds in 26 minutes. Nikhil only had 2 rebounds in 19 minutes. Those intermediate rebounds, which are effectively 50-50 balls, it's not technically a loose ball. I mean, it is a loose ball, but when you think of loose ball or you think of 50-50 balls, you think of like tip pass, ball rolling on the floor, wild broken play, whatever. It's a rebound, but it's not right at the rim. It's one that you have to have your guards crashing from the wings. You have to have your wings collapsing and not leaking out. You have to make sure you secure the rebound before you can go back the other way. I've said this on the show a bunch, although not recently, and it may be obvious, but defensive rebound is a huge part of defense, because the only way a possession ends is, I used to say this all the time on the show, the Wolves have been so much better at rebounding in the last couple of years. I haven't said it as much, really, in the Rudy Gobert era. But the only way that a possession ends for the other team is by them scoring, turning the ball over, or you getting a defensive rebound. So rebounding is really important. Defensive rebounding is part of defense. And the Wolves, the numbers would say they've been a fine defensive rebounding team this year, but it's games like this where it kills them. And I know they ended up even in the box score, but it killed them early in this game. Especially when you can't score offensively and they're struggling to shoot, you can't give them multiple cracks at it. You can't give them multiple bites at the apple when they're struggling as well. And that's exactly what happened, especially early in this game. Transition defense, again, early in the game, more so than late, was a big problem. Each team ended up with 17 fast break points. So again, you look at the box score, you look at the not box score, whatever, the team summaries or whatever, the team stats for the game, and you say, oh, it's even. When the Warriors built this lead, it was fast break points additionally that helped them do it, in addition to the offensive rebounds. It's all the stuff you worry about with the Wolves, was complete lack of effort in transition. And I called out Randle for, Randle would certainly be on the list. Gobert had a couple of possessions where he loafed back. Ant struggled in this game with, hustling in transition to get back defensively. It was just, again, effort. That is what the problem is. It's worrisome, certainly. And I would say that it, and also, by the way, transition is effort is the most important thing. The other thing is scheme and understanding of what you're supposed to be doing, right? It's floor balance. It's covering each other's guys and the other problem the Wolves seem to have, and it's communication. Another problem they seem to have is they've got guys who, and Randle and Ant are probably the two biggest defenders, who will stick to the guy who's supposed to be their guy instead of covering someone else's. Instead of picking up the guy that's sprinting to the opposite corner or streaking to the rim, they're pointing like, oh no, this is my guy. It's the D'Lo effect. D'Lo used to do this all the time. He would just point at the open guy. And, there were multiple possessions in this game where Randle and Ant, and I think maybe once Rudy, although Rudy's usually not a major offender here, are like, oh no, that's my guy over here. Even though the ball's going that way to the open guy, I'm going to stick with my guy out on the perimeter who's not a threat to score right now. And that was a problem. And that's a combination of, is it communication? Is it not understanding the scheme? Or is this simply laziness? These dudes are professional basketball players. I lean toward laziness. I think they know what they're supposed to do there. And that was a problem throughout this game. See, we talked about second chance rebounds. We talked our second chance points and defensive rebounding. Missed free throws in the second half. That's another one. The Wolves actually did attempt. The Wolves actually did attempt 2 more free throws than Golden State in this game. They made the same number. They were 17-25. Golden State was 17-23. So 74% for the Warriors and 68% for Minnesota. But they missed, I think, 6 free throws in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. I think 6 of their 8 misses were in the second half. Not that it matters. They all count the same. I shouldn't say not that it matters. I think that could get oversold because they matter regardless. A missed free throw in the first half counts the same. But it was a bit of a buzzkill as Target Center was coming alive and the Wolves had a chance to build on a 1-point lead. They missed some technical free throws, I think 2 of them in this game. They missed opportunities to expand, to eat into the Warriors lead initially and then to expand their own lead by missing at the free throw line. And it seems like a silly thing and 1 point at a time, whatever. But you look back on it and you say, look, if you make a couple, 3, 4 more of those, this is a very different game. I know they ended up losing by 10, but it was a problem throughout the second half of this game. for Minnesota. And by the way, side note, Ant spent like his whole post game media at his locker complaining about the officiating. It was spotty to be sure. But it just like I don't know if he's just so frustrated that he didn't feel like reading the room, but like this wasn't the game to do that after for Ant. I do think it was a bad, his I think fourth foul when he blocked a shot. They called a foul. That was a bad call. I do think he should have gotten to the line more than, 4 free throw attempts in this game. But coming off of these last 2 losses, that was I would call it a bit of a tone deaf move for Ant to complain about the officiating, and he's going to get fined for the way he did it too. If you go back and watch his comments, I just thought that was kind of a little bit of a mistake. A game you lose by 10, Ant shoots just 6 of 20 himself. They turn it over 5 more times than the Warriors. Not like it's not like they lost by a bucket. And it's not like the Warriors shot more free throws. The Wolves actually shot more free throws. The Warriors were called for more personal fouls in this game than Minnesota. Now, the Warriors certainly, it's the effort that a lot of teams deploy against Ant and against the Wolves in general, which is they can't call everything, right? You need to out-physical them because the Wolves will at some point back down if you do. And I do think there was a lot of holding and grabbing on rebounds, actually, more than on Ant. But this was just not the time, the place, the moment to complain about the officiating if you're Anthony Edwards. All right. Let's talk individual studs and duds. We'll talk Wolves Hawks here to close the show, and that'll be all for this one. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or traveling. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. I love using points for travel. Built makes it super easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, well, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt, joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our link so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our title sponsors over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, just a couple weeks away, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can finish their season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. It's absolutely thrilling. Of course, the Vikings had another big win on Sunday. There's a Packers Saints is tonight. I believe it's a 14.5-point line. Saints at Packers, of course, no Derek Carr. There's no Alvin Kamara, among other guys missing. No Chris Olave. Lots of guys missing for the Saints. So go check that game out and see what that line is. 14.5 is a big line, but I also wouldn't really feel comfortable taking any number of points with the Saints in Lambeau. But you can bet on individual players as well, the prop bets, etc. How many players will score, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's close this thing out with studs and duds from another disappointing Wolves loss. Studs for Minnesota. Got to talk Naz Reid. We did a little bit already. I know he had a couple bad turnovers, but overall, Naz was a huge reason for this Wolves comeback when they were down by as many as 21 in this game. I think it was 21. Let's see. Yeah, they were down by as many as 21. And Naz was a big reason for the comeback. He finished with 16 points and 11 shots, 6 of 11 shooting, 4 of 7 on threes. He also had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block in this game. He did turn it over 3 times. But Naz was active on both ends of the floor. He played hard. He had a nice chase down block in transition. hit a couple of tough threes. One of them was like right after the block, so it was a really good momentum swing moment, and it was just really good to see Naz Reid play super well. It's a good matchup for him. He can use his length, his athleticism, his speed, and he was playing hard. And that unit, that third quarter unit, we'll talk about Dante as well. Those guys were a big part of it. We're just playing at a frenetic pace that the starters weren't. And there's something about Anthony Edwards kind of loafing around at times, and aging Mike Conley and Rudy occasionally loafing around, and Jaden and Randle. There's just not very much speed in that lineup. Jaden should be fast. Randle can be fast in secondary break situations in transition, and it obviously can be. But the combination of like the hot and cold of Randle and Ant, the age of Conley, the size and age of Gobert, and the way he plays, and the demeanor of McDaniels, just it's not the same as what Naz and Dante and Alexander Walker can give you off the bench. And Naz was a huge part of that third quarter rally for Minnesota. Dante DiVincenzo with one of his better games in a Wolves uniform against one of his former teams in the Golden State Warriors. 19 points on 7 of 12 for Dante, 3 of 6 on threes. Weirdly, he shot 6 2-point shots. It was 4 of 6 on 2 points, 2-point attempts. 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals for Dante DiVincenzo. I thought he played very well. You could argue he was their best player in this game. So a strong Dante game. And he looked to gain a bit of confidence too outside the arc. I think 2 of his 3 3-point makes were catch and shoot. He's just got to get more catch and shoot opportunities instead of shooting the ball, off the dribble as much as he has this season for Minnesota. But overall, a decent, better than decent, a good Dante DiVincenzo game for sure. I don't really have any other. I guess I'll give Rudy a stud. He was good. The line was really nice. I don't know that he was quite as good as his line, but well, I don't know. That's tough to say. I don't know that he was. He was solid defensively. Golden State ended up scoring 113, but it wasn't because of the paint. It was because of what they were able to do outside the arc, and it was because of Steph being Steph. The Wolves actually had 4 more points in the paint in this game than Golden State. Rudy had 18 points on 7 of 8 shooting. He converted a ton of lobs. He was just really, really good in the paint for Minnesota. 4 of 7 at the line, which is fine. That'll play. 12 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, a steal, only 1 turnover for Rudy. And I thought he controlled the paint defensively very nicely in this game. So Rudy, Naz, and Dante would be the 3 studs in this one. Duds, a few candidates here. I'm actually going to go. Well, I don't know. I guess I got to go Mike Conley. He was 1 of 5 on threes, 1 of 6 overall, missed a floater badly again in this game. 3 points, 5 assists, a couple of turnovers, and only ended up playing 25 minutes. DiVincenzo was on the floor for what was basically crunch time toward the end of the game, or I guess the only period of time we could call crunch time. Dante was on the floor for instead of Conley. So he was a dud in this game. Conley was. I'm also going to go Julius Randle. I know he had 16, 7, and 6, and some people aren't going to like this, but he was 4 of 13 shooting, and he had some bad missed rotations. The effort level just was not there, and he's kind of the lightning rod right now for fan frustration. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think the effort level is the bigger thing, and when he makes a shot, it's like, okay, it worked that time, but it might not the next 2 times that you dribble into a crowd and throw up a tough 12-footer. It's just not aesthetically pleasing. It's not efficient overall. It's not consistently efficient. And it's tough. It's a tough watch, and it's not a positive impact more often than not when it comes to Julius on offense. And defensively, the effort is just not there. It's just not right now for Julius Randle. And I thought he was had a negative impact on this game for the Wolves. All right. I ran out of time to talk a whole lot about the Hawks matchup. They're a team that has been a bit up and down this season too. I think overall maybe better than people expected them to be. They've been more down than up recently. They had won 6 in a row recently. Now they've lost 4 out of 6. They got blown out by the Nuggets a little over a week ago. Then they beat the Knicks, which was a bad Knicks performance in an in-season tournament game, the semifinal, the quarterfinal. Then they went to the in-season tournament semifinal, lost to the Bucks. And then since then, they lost in OT to Wemby and the Spurs, and they were beat by Memphis last Saturday night, the same night the Wolves lost to the Warriors. So they're coming off 3 consecutive losses, 4 out of 5. but they're back home now, or still home after they lost at home to Memphis on Saturday. For the Timberwolves tonight, it's a 6:30 p.m. Central game. Of course, the Wolves are also looking ahead to their Christmas Day game against the Mavs at 1:30 p.m. Wednesday. So this would be a good one to have. Obviously, at Dallas is real tough, and as we talked about earlier last week, the schedule upcoming is real hard for Minnesota. So it's absolutely a winnable game for the Wolves. The Hawks, as a team overall, are relatively healthy. I should mention, obviously, Trae Young didn't play Saturday. He's considered day-to-day, so it's probably 50-50 that Trae Young plays in this game on against the Wolves on Monday night. They've had, obviously, injuries to Bogdanovich this year. So we will see. But especially if Trae Young doesn't play, obviously a very winnable game. But even if he does play, an opponent that the Wolves, I think, by the way, that was only the second game all year that Trae Young's missed, if I'm not mistaken. This is an opponent that, I mean, they're going to want to play fast. They're top 5 in the league in pace, and the Wolves would prefer to play slow, obviously. And they're a good offensive rebounding team. It's a tough, and they force turnovers defensively. So it's a really tough mix. Obviously, Quinn Snyder, their coach, playing against former guys or former players that he coached, and Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I believe he coached Nickeil Alexander-Walker briefly, but Joe Ingles, I guess, as well. So it'll be an interesting matchup, but a tough one for Minnesota. I actually worry a little bit about this one, and especially the place that it is between the 2-game homestand, the spot, the schedule, and then leading into the matinee on Christmas Day in Dallas. It's going to be tough. I mean, to keep some of these guys, Onyeka Okongwu off the glass, Dyson Daniels as a guard is a really strong rebounder at crashing. Jalen Johnson, same thing. These are guys who could hurt the Wolves on the glass, and that could be a problem. Now, the Hawks don't shoot a ton of threes. It's basically Trae Young and, a little bit of DeAndre Hunter and Bogdanovich when they've been able to play are the dudes that shoot threes. And now that they're healthy, those guys are healthy. I think that overall 3-point volume for the Hawks is going to come up a little bit. But the biggest concern is their defense forces turnovers, their offense grabs offensive rebounds, and they play fast. Those are all things that don't line up super well with the Wolves. They're not a great defensive team overall. They're pretty middle of the pack, but it's the way that they defend, right? They don't foul a ton, which the Wolves need to get to the line. And they haven't enough this year, but they need to more, and they turn it over a ton. So it's a dicey matchup. I think it's a game the Wolves still should win, especially if Trae Young doesn't play. But I worry a little bit about all those factors in this game. We'll have the live postcast. Jack and Luke will have the live postcast on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel, and then the audio here at Locked On Wolves. I'll be back Tuesday, probably early mid-morning with the post-game pod we'll hit you with on Tuesday. Same deal. We'll get a podcast ready for you for Christmas Day to get you ready for Wolves Mavs. And then we'll have the post-game pod for Wolves Mavs. Likely we'll post on, I don't know, whatever day of the week that is. Do days of the week matter around Christmas and New Year's, like in between those holidays? I don't know. I think it's Thursday. It is Thursday. We'll have a post-game pod from Wolves Mavs on Wednesday. So packed week ahead. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, and as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And of course, subscribe to the new Locked On Wolves newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.